Welcome to Kicking Ass and Taking Names, the Business Owners Empowerment Podcast. I'm your host, Marlon Griffith Esquire. Join us on this podcast journey as we help you break free from the grind and get your business to work for you. We will delve into impactful conversations with business owners, corporate leaders, professional service providers, and industry innovators that will provide you with insights and actionable strategies that will transform your entrepreneurial path, boost your success, and put you in control of your business journey so you can kick ass and take names. Ken, welcome to episode 18 of Kicking Ass and Taking Names. It's taken us a little while, but we've got you onto this podcast, and I look forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here and do this with you.
So, Ken, tell me, what does Merritt Advisory Group do?
So Merritt Advisory Group, we are, in the shortest way of thinking about it, we are strategic advisors, right? And a lot of organizations, a lot of people use the term strategy and talk about doing strategy advice. We have the pleasure of actually doing big strategy work for our clients, right? And that kind of comes in two categories. It's organization strategy. You know, if you're a company and trying to figure out how you grow or how you roll out a new product or maintain your profitability. It could also be things like functionally how you're organized. I got a client now who's got a marketing group and they need to move it towards their competitive landscape. So got to get better in their capabilities. And it also can be an initiative, right? So if you are looking to take out costs, right? So that's not enterprise solely. It could just be, SG&A costs, sales and general administration and how you do that. So that's the org side. Then we also do leadership advisory, which that is with thought partners, with CEOs and CFOs and business leaders. We coach. I've got a number of people that I coach them on their functional being better as well as their personal aspirations. But we also do team meetings and workshops and offsites and a lot of those things that also fall under the leadership advisory.
You know, the way you describe your services remind me of that 3M commercial. We don't create the product, we make the product better.
I kind of love that, right? And the way I'd say it is we make the company strategy and their leaders better. We don't make them, but we make them better, right? Mm-hmm. We talk a lot about one of the words I use, and I remember when I first rolled it out, Marlon, is part of my branding, leadership gravitas. And people are like, what does that mean, right? And that, for me, that is helping leaders reach their full potential. Right. And so that's a great way that you describe it. We don't make the leaders, but we do make them better and more successful.
Why would a owner of a small, medium-sized business engage your services? Why are they coming to you?
It's a great question because I try to answer it in two ways. Right. Mm-hmm. Most of the time when leaders are in growth companies, let's call them growth companies and growth situations, when they come, they do have a specific business problem that they're trying to solve, right? I've had maybe the last three. One was, hey, I've got a compensation question. I got these, we're growing and I've got these execs and leaders. I need to know how to pay them properly so they stay, right? One is, hey, we need to remake our value proposition because the way we talk about ourselves doesn't make a lot of sense with what we do best, right? Another one may be that, hey, we're not organized for growth, right? Like I'm getting more work, but I can't handle it all because I'm not so sure I got enough people, but I don't want to spend yet. So all these, there's always a specific thing that people who, like you and me, with growing businesses and mid markets, they top of mind, that's a solution that they're looking for, right? But what I like to do is say, hey, we're gonna certainly address that, but if we think broadly, what are the challenges that you're facing, right? Because in many ways, these growth problems or specific things that are on their mind are part of, you and I know, part of the broader growing pains. And so what I much rather do is kind of hear and understand the full context. I kind of use the term strategic context that they're facing as an organization and figure out where the opportunities for them to accomplish their success goals in the context and where this business problem fits in, such that we are really helping them. It's always my goal to be a partner and a thought partner for them for the long term. And so we start with one problem, but boy, does it lead to a whole host of things that we probably can help with. Like, there are patterns of things that honestly I see all the time, and some of them are common, and I can provide them, a thought partner with case studies and situations that will help them kind of navigate, one, how to think about it, and two, probably some solutions.
So tell us about some of the patterns you see in growing pains of these companies.
Yeah. There's usually three types of things that I see that business leaders are faced with as executives. And, Marlon, what's fascinating fascinates me is a lot of leaders see these things, and they leadership is a lonely scenario sometimes, right? And so they think they're going through it by themselves, and they it feels unique. In many cases, it's not. These are things that are in many ways natural growing pains. I'd say 95 out of 100 challenges that leaders of small and medium-sized businesses face are fairly common, right?
Yes.
There's certain things that are idiosyncratic, maybe financing, or maybe your geo or your market or your product and those kind of things. Yes. But the most common things, right, that we face is we have unclear direction about what our strategy is and what our kind of North Star and what we're trying to get to, right? So we're flying blind in many ways. Two, we have, expectations that aren't clear, right? Because without direction and everybody's expectations are all over the place, right? And trying to figure out, whether you as the leader or the board and people who are advising you or your employees and those around you, everybody's usually on different pages. And so that's the second one, right? And then the third one is just misalignment on the business capabilities, on what you can actually do, right, to improve and accomplish your goals. And so as a leader, you're juggling those things, right? Where to go, how to navigate all your stakeholders and the expectations they have, and then how to advance your capabilities, right? And because if you're a software or product company and that's the way you built it, you're really good at those things. You're probably not as good as the admin side. Right. And so there's a lot of commonality.
I know that I often see, and tell me if you agree with me, that there's a difference between the role of a leader and the role of a manager.
Agree? I totally agree. In fact, I did a leadership seminar a few weeks ago, right, for a group, 8 leaders who were kind of a new board of coming together. And a lot of these times I start with quotes and things to kind of set the context. And there's this one that I read for them by Peter Drucker, who's kind of known as the godfather these days of management and leadership, right? And it goes something, I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, it goes something to the effect of, managers make sure we do the right thing. Leaders make sure we do the right things the right way and with the right people, right? And that is a really good distinction, and one that I love when I think about what you said there.
Let's talk about the 3 common themes that small and mid-sized business owners are dealing with. And more importantly, how do you get the leaders to see that these problems, again, I call them opportunities, exist?
Yeah, it is. That's I think that's step one, right? I like to say, if if it's almost like if you have a challenge yourself, right? A health problem or whatever, right?
Mm.
First thing you got to do is acknowledge you have an issue, right?
Right.
I don't know that I'm pretty good that I'm good at saying, hey, you got this wrong.
Right.
I'm actually a lot better at saying, hey, have you ever thought about things this way? And well-run organizations do things this way or have these outcomes or whatnot. Almost putting a mirror to the situation and then having them say, boy, tell me a little bit more about this and tell me a little bit more about that. What was, that's an interesting case study. Let's go a little deeper. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I love to do, in fact, I almost never do any org strategy work or leadership advisory work without an assessment, right?
Sure.
Of us level setting on kind of what the org or the individual does best and what the opportunities are, right? And I try to use a formal objective process so that it truly is a look in the mirror, because I'm going to give you my commentary, right? And I'm going to give you my, I always say you're paying me to tell you, where your real challenges are and where your big opportunities are. But we're not just flying off my expert opinion. We're going to use some formality, some structure, and go through it and be really professional about an assessment so you can see it, hear it, process it, and we then go attack it.
Look, our clients are successful people. They built a business that employs other people. They built a business that provides for themselves and for their families. They've trusted themselves to get to where they are. How do you get them to trust you?
I love the way you talked about that, right? And maybe a little bit of my history. I think the way I got into this and set those kind of rules is because early on in my career, I was being asked by people who were senior to me, who in many ways, you had to show a certain level of reverence around. They built large businesses. They built organizations. And then have you come in and say to them, tell them what's going on. You had to kind of learn to do it the right way, right? And so one of the reasons I start with these assessments is I don't want to kind of give feedback or opinions or perspective without full context, right?
So when you help leaders build or hire their C-suite, what are the considerations?
A quick story. Some years ago, I worked for a large because of what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to retain the brand. Let's say a large coffee brand. Had hired a CFO, and the question was, is this the right leader for us? Because boy, is he having a hard time, right? And I was like, okay, what does it mean when you say he's having a hard time? I mean, is he feeling down, or are you struggling with the outcomes? And it was more them struggling with the outcomes. And I said, okay, well, let's go in. So I went in, met with him, and by all accounts, Marlon, he was a great guy, right? Hardworking, really focused on outcomes and moving the company better in a best practice way. But he had really sharp elbows, right? He was crass, he was direct, he was, right to the point. And so when I went back to the folks who brought me in, the CEO and the board, to say, okay, is he the right guy? I was like, it depends on what you're looking for. I said, I understand why you think he is a challenge, because he's not right in your culture, right? But if you want a culture shakeup, then he's the right guy to have, right? Because he's gonna break a lot of glass, right? But if you want someone who's going to be a little bit more nice and get the culture and the people while making transformational change, then yeah, we should talk about what type of leader he is. I see this a lot within small businesses, right? Because you know, a lot of us as leaders and owners, we fall in love with a person's background and what they can do for the company, but we don't necessarily ask the question about culture and fit and style and what you really want them to do. Are you hiring them for that expert background, or are you hiring them to be a transformational leader to take you someplace, because those two things aren't always in concert.
Sure.
Get your expectations and your goals organized so you can get it right, out the jump.
And yes, oftentimes when they come to you to build out their C-suite, they're thinking about scaling their business. But we know that scaling does not rely on an individual. It relies on building a system where every individual is replaceable.
Yeah, it's such a dynamic situation.
Sure.
Right? And there's probably 3 or 4 things they got to consider. One, and first and foremost, again, that strategy, that North Star. What is it that you want to accomplish? I see way too many businesses not using the discipline of articulating their goals, right? Their real value proposition in the market and their real targeted outcomes, right? Because growing at 25 and 30% is very different than growing at 8 to 12, right? And so first and foremost, getting some clarity on where you want to go kind of helps define in some ways and put some boundaries around who should be in your C-suite, right? So I think that's one. I think number 2 is coming up with a framework for true kind of collaboration, right? What I see too often, and like a big gap that I see is, you have an owner, a leader, and they're high flying, right? And they've picked their number 2 and others, and the feedback loop is either super formal, right? Because they've stood up a performance management process, or it's completely ad hoc, right? And what's happening is they're constantly on different pages. And so where the improvement, how do you get on the same page? How do you stay aligned? Doesn't happen well, right? So getting a good cadence of dialogue and the way we work, we all are familiar with forming, storming, norming, right? The faster you can figure out how to norm, right, and make words matter and feedback, I think the better you are at then, having a cohesive, leadership team. And then I think the third one, and this one haunts a lot of small and mid-sized businesses too, role clarity, right? What is my role, right? Because I see a lot of times people get hired for kind of their history and what they've done in the past. And boy, they may have been and I've listened to so many of your episodes, and you've had tremendous sales leaders giving great advice up here, right? And sometimes I've seen companies hire someone who has a tremendous track record of sales, right? But what you kind of need them to do in this business is help you stand up business development as a function. And those two things are different, right? And if you didn't pick the right person, now you got to disconnect, because this person's great, feet on the street, shaking hands, even identifying, maybe even closing deals. That doesn't make for a scaled business development function, though, right? And so hopefully those 3 things make sense, but I see these things all the time. And because you and I'm sure you've seen it, I've seen it, business get to a certain point where they can't evolve to the next phase in their maturity, right. Because their sales are tied to one person's availability. Maybe that person's a rainmaker and was the right person to take you from 2 million to 20. But if you want to go from 20 to 50 and 50 to 200, that's got to be a scale business development with some rainmakers, with some inside sales, with some client relationship management system and tools, all those kind of things. And again, just because a person was a great rainmaker doesn't mean they're capable of building that system for you.
When hiring a C-suite, you would agree that the C-suite, or the people that they're hiring in the C-suite, have to be in alignment with the owner's vision. So it's very important that the owner is clear and has clarity about his or her vision.
It's why I started talking about putting it down on paper, right? I mentioned that earlier, right? I see a lot of leaders and founders, especially as they continue to grow the business. Boy, they got a lot of stuff in their head, right? They got a lot of ideas where they want to take things, but the people around them can't read their minds, right? They can listen to them so
Right.
we got to take those things and get them on paper so that we can
Sure.
then turn them into actionable, initiatives and
Sure.
projects and investments and such that the people who are stepping into those manager roles kind of can do what they do best, right? Because they aren't necessarily visionaries or entrepreneurial, right? In many cases, you hired them to be executors. Well, you got at least enough framework to go execute. And that is a huge opportunity for a lot of leaders in kind of the small to mid-market space.
Company. So we've talked about the strategy, the leadership aspect. Talk about the organizational services that you provide.
I can give 2 or 3 examples, or maybe I can give you three of the projects I've got going on now, because they are pretty indicative of org strategy. The first one is I do quite a bit of merger and acquisition work, right? And usually when we think of M&A, we're thinking of big businesses, right? And we think of armies of lawyers and consultants and people, valuations and all that kind of things. And those things are pretty important. But small businesses make acquisitions too, right? And not-for-profits make acquisitions too, right? If you think about it, in the times we've been in, there are a lot of funding challenges that small businesses and not-for-profits have had. And what that's caused is the opportunity for larger orgs to kind of be a exit strategy for those small businesses and nonprofits. And so what I help do in those situations, one, and I've done 3 of these like in the last year. One, I was a sales size small company looking to get out. So we formalized the process to make sure they can get the best kind of value for what assets they had, right? The next time it was a buy side of a larger org looking and doing the financial due diligence and making sure that we understood the opportunity and the risk associated with that company. And then most recently, I was working on one for one of my clients who, we were thinking about a merger of 2 companies the same size, and for big and obvious reasons, we didn't go forward with it. But we kind of helped frame up on both sides why a merger at the time wasn't going to make sense. So M&A is one thing I do. I've got clients who are all seeking growth, right? And that's an overused term, Marlon, you and I know, but what and part of what I bring to them is, what do we mean by growth? What do we want to do? Right? Is it revenue growth? Is it profitability growth? Is it people? Is it market presence? Do you want to?
Yes, it's most businesses don't realize, or business owners, I should say, that there's a big difference between revenue and profitability and cash flow.
It's the most important piece, right? It's the most important piece, right? More businesses fail because they don't have profits and cash than they do because they don't have revenues, right? And so a lot of times when I roll in and we're talking about growth, I want to unpack what we mean by the words growth, right? And let's be really, really sharp on what it is we think we're aspiring to do, right? Because there's many different ways. Again, you can talk, growth can be going into new markets and new geographies. And so, so that's another one, growth. And then there's also, again, how do you organize and think about the long term of scaling your business, right? Which is really so much broader. It kind of combines the leadership things we've been talking about, and a definition of growth and what your strengths and competitive landscape is, and then kind of figure out, boy, is it possible for us to go from 10 million to 25 million, right? And if so, what do we need to do to frame that? So putting together a strategic plan, and and I'm sure you'd agree with this, that what a lot of owners and leaders do is they kind of know directionally what the important initiatives are. But I always say they should pay folks like me and you to one, confirm that those are the right initiatives, but more importantly, the sequence of events of things, right? Because sometimes people put the cart before the horse, right? There's a fine line between hiring and putting your infrastructure and your admin in place to go from 10 to 25, or getting the anchor projects that are going to get you to 25 and then try to adjust your admin. That's not an easy thing to be evaluating. And so, guys like me and you from your law services, we often can help them think about sequencing of all the things you need to grow and expand your business. And in the the consulting world, right? The pointy hit consulting world, we call it finding the critical path, right? The critical path from where you are to where you want to be, right? And if that link in the chain and that path is weak, then you better reinforce that. You better address, if you got to kind of go around that link or do a detour, it's going to cost you, right? Yeah. And you want to minimize that, the impact is going to have on your goals, objectives, and net cost.
You hire for people or you hire for the position. One of the considerations that the owner should be considering is, how does this position fit within the growth strategy?
I do a lot of, I team with and have a lot of clients who have fractional services. And again, I know this has been great. I got some great insights from a couple of your previous podcasts, right? And I get a lot of questions from owners is, hey, if I'm approaching 50 million, is it time for me to hire X, right? Or Y? And I always tell them those are reasonable rules of thumb, but you should always be operating to a strategic plan, first and foremost. And then two, you should be clear on the roles and responsibilities and outcomes that you seek that are part of a plan, right? Just because if you're feeling the stresses of hiring because you have a business that's, say, people and labor intensive, I get it, right? That you might that core to your competitive advantage is finding project managers or consultants or those type or new lawyers or something. Then you need to probably think about bringing that in the house. Right? But if you are, if your business is a service you're providing, right, and you think you have the right kind of core expertise already, you just now need to fill in your admin seats or some ancillary supportive roles. That's something you can outsource, right? And focus your business where it needs to be. And I just gave an example there. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying you should have a plan and evaluate to make sure that you're making those investments based off where you are, where you want to go, your resources, your expectation, your goals, right? So that you're not inefficient about your growth and spending. Right.
Yes, because often one of the reasons that businesses end up having way too much overhead is because they hire people and not hire for positions.
It is to kind of know what your parameters are, right? To know what your marks are, right? Because it is easy. It is really easy for overhead to get out of whack, right? It's very easy to let your kind of wants and needs for, like, going to the car dealership, as you put it before, right? Those kind of things, it's just natural. It's kind of what we, it's the way most people are wired. And I never am critical of anyone for that. What I'm critical of is not having a plan that you can then govern yourself to make sure you're on pace, right? Because in the absence of it, you just don't know how good you are or not. And so, have a plan. Strategic planning is done to few and far in between in small and medium-sized companies.
How would a business owner use a consultant to create the strategic plan?
Is there not like a lot of strategy services, right? Like if I can, I'm going to be critical of my own profession for a minute.
Sure.
Is that we're either big houses that are really expensive, right? Or we are, overusing the word strategy and not being able to kind of meet a growing business where they are to put together a comprehensive strategic
not
plan.
practical.
A practical plan, exactly. And so what we try to do at Merritt Advisor is remain pragmatic, right? Meet our clients where they are, right? And so, we're not going to write you some 50-page consulting book that you got to try to now go solve for the next 2 years and get overwhelmed when you get past page 12 and you have you can nothing else you can even get done. It's got 14 initiatives in it. We're not going to do that, right? What we're going to do is kind of talk about, help you set your context, help you frame up kind of the planning process. And I do like to take a long-term view of what we're trying to do, but then let's talk about that from moving from a 3-year view to, okay, what does 2026 look like? What do we need to do to finish 2025 strong? And how does that look in context of our market, our people, our services or products that we perform, our succession planning, our compensation, because all those things end up being intertwined. And so you gotta take stock in it and then figure out the pragmatic chunks to go bite off when, right? Because it can absolutely be overwhelming. So, in fact, in your fail forward episode, episode or two ago, talked about how you get the type of support you need, advisors you need, and then hold them accountable, right? I'd almost challenge any owner who's looking for a strategic advisor to get one who can actually execute too, right? Don't let them off the hook by giving you a bunch of kind of well-written PowerPoints and PDFs that you then have to go kind of try to execute yourself. Engage one who's going to be a thought partner for you in putting that together and get it to a place where you feel good about how pragmatic it is and practical you can do it. And then hold them to account to be your partner as you kind of execute through it. Not to say your consultant should do it, but also a partner who's helping you vision it, plan it, and can execute it.
Absolutely. I said, that I would give a shout out to your alma mater, North Carolina A&T. Well, who has the best homecoming?
Right, Aggie pride. And for a lot of people, right, God bless their, for other HBCUs, I love them. We're all, related, and then other universities. But if you don't believe that, that North Carolina A&T has the greatest homecoming on earth, just Google it. Just Google greatest homecoming on earth, and you'll see, right? And we have an open invitation. Anyone could come. We open it to everyone and all. And I guarantee you'll have a good time, right? And yes, I'm a proud alum. And it's a family affair because my wife and I met in college. And both of my daughter, who's 26, my son's 23, they're alums now. And we, Aggie born, Aggie bred, so we're always representing.
So as you know, we've had a great conversation and we've gotten to that point of the podcast where I ask all of my guests, can you give me 3 pieces of advice that you would give a business owner? The floor is yours.
Yeah, and first, thank you for this, Marlon. Yeah, I've been looking forward to it. I've listened to, you've had some great guests on here, and they've, I hope, I appreciate the opportunity. I hope I've been as enlightening for others as those folks were enlightening to me. The 3 things, the first one I've talked about, strategic planning, right? It's hard, it takes time, but you will benefit as a business owner by putting together a strategic plan. right? And if you're good at it and can do it on your own, by all means. But it's an area where you should invest if you have to. Go get someone who can help you think about the next 3 years, next year's plan, and the rest of this year, and help you frame that up so you can execute on. Number 2 is I see a lot of folks trying to grow their business, and they want to grow it what I would call outside in, meaning they think they have a great service or a great brand or great something, and they got a wonderful website or a great pitch, all these things, and that's great, right? But when you're small and your resources are limited, consider building your business inside out. That you get good at being operationally efficient and most importantly, delivering products and services that are going to be fulfilling to your clients and make money for you, right? The marketing, all the kind of sexy stuff on the outside will come. Consider building your business inside out rather than outside in, right? Is number 2. And then the third one, probably a little bit cliche, but it's people. It really is, right? Like your owner, as an owner, you have got special characteristics that are entrepreneurial, that is, innate leadership, is risk taking, all these kind of things. And you have built your business based off those things. Not everyone has those things. And there are things that other people have that you don't. So think about your people strategy and scaling what you are with the proper respect and time that it's due, right? Make sure that as you think about your C-suite and building it out, and then your level below that it's a comprehensive set of capabilities, set of competencies, that you're ready to compensate them and do all the things such that you can scale what you do with the people who are capable of doing what your goals are.
Ken, I know this took a while from our days back at the gym to finally now get recording this episode, but it's well worth the wait. Your information you provided has been spot on, and I think it's going to be very helpful to my audience. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Kicking Ass and Taking Names. Remember, information is only as good as its application. So apply these insights and strategies and start making transformational changes to your business and life today. If you have not already, please subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and YouTube. Keep kicking ass and taking names.